this is James here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting December the 30th, 2019. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this week's video reading. I am so happy to have you here. Why? It's because this is the week that we are transitioning from 2019. We are saying goodbye to 2019 and hello to 2020. And so this reading will kind of help us see or navigate our way through this transitional phase. So I am very excited to see what's in the cards this week. I don't know about you, but at this time of the year, I tend to get very reflective. I tend to do an overview of all the things that I experienced in 2019 with the intention of how did those experiences help foster either my personal or my spiritual growth and development. With that in mind, I always reflect on my cartomancy practice, and I tend to think, what did I learn in terms of improving my skill that's going to make me a better reader, either personally, because I read my own cards every single day, or professionally as I work with my clients. And this year was no exception. This time period is no exception. And then I realized, as I was in reflection mode, that I have crossed a milestone. I reached my first year anniversary of my work with Tarot de Marseille, and I am so excited. Every day I get to work with this system, I fall in love with it just a little bit more than I did the day before, and that's saying a lot because I've been reading cards for a long time. As I'm reflecting on my year with Tarot de Marseille, I tend to think of it being my quote-unquote signature system because it's the system for me that is reflective of the dream I had, and I've talked about that dream many times in this space, but that was such a signpost in my life when I had the dream, and it set me on the path of becoming a card reader. If you haven't heard the story and you'd like to know more about it, you can just let me know in the comment section below, and I'll be more than happy to share that with you. But as I've worked with Tarot de Marseille, it made me feel like that was the deck I probably should have started out with 21 years ago when I became a card reader. But there are no mistakes. You know, everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, and everything unfolds the way it's supposed to unfold. So what I learned about my work with Tarot de Marseille, and the reason why I have it in my life now, is because I had to learn learn how to work with Lenormand, because Lenormand came first, and learn Kipper, because Kipper came after that, and Gypsy cards, all the more European cartomantic systems, right? They came into my life first, and there are techniques and processes in those systems that when Tarot de Marseille came into my life, I could incorporate into that work. And so that is why I believe it didn't happen back when I started, and it's happening now. And so I'm just so overjoyed and excited to work with Tarot de Marseille. Like I said, I think it's my system. Even though with my professional work, I will still probably be working with RWS, because even though I have the TDM bug, my clients haven't gotten bitten yet. So it's a little bit of a transitional process. But, you know, they're in control of their sessions, and they get to decide what deck or what system they want to work with. And so right now, a lot of them are holding on to RWS, and it's fine. I mean, it is what it is. I've been reading RWS for 20 years, so it's cool. Having said all of that, I just realized that as I come full circle in this year with Tarot de Marseille, I'm going to end this year with the system. So the deck that's going to be assisting me for this week's reading is the CBD Tarot de Marseille, and the CBD is for Conver Ben-Dov. And this is why. The very first Oracle Outlook I did for 2019 was with TDM, and so I thought, why not go out the same way I came in this year, right? So the CBD Tarot de Marseille is by the late Dr. Yoav Ben-Dov, and it is now published by US Game Systems Incorporated. So now that I've set things up, let's get to the table and see what the CBD Tarot de Marseille has to say about transitioning from 2019 into 2020. And here we are with the cards on the table, and I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the deck. And as I shuffle, I'm focusing on my intention for these general readings, and that is for the information, for the insight, and for the guidance to come through the cards that is going to be most helpful and beneficial as we move through the upcoming week. I'm feeling one more time will be good. All right. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. And now I'm going to fan the cards out. And I'm looking for 5 cards in the fan that are getting my attention, because I'm going to be working with a line of 5 this week. And so I have the 5 cards selected. Now I'm going to take the remainder of the deck up, and we'll put that to one side. And so now I'm going to count the cards back. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now I'm going to lay them out in a line from left to right. Now I'm going to take a moment to just look at them, make sure the line is somewhat straight. There we go. All right. And so when I work with a line of 5, whether it is with Lenormand or Kipper or playing cards, or in this case, Tarot de Marseille, I always like to start with the middle card. For me, the middle card always represents the central issue or the focus for the week ahead. So taking a look at the card, we have the 3 of Wands, or the 3 of Batons. So for me, this card usually represents understanding. So that's the first thing that I want to say. For me, the suit of baton or wands can come up when we are making progress, and then the number 3 represents growth and development. So since we are talking about transitioning from 2019 to 2020 this week, for me, this card would be about understanding. What have you understood? Because again, the suit of wands represents teaching and learning and progress. So what did life teach you? What did you learn through your experiences? Because the suit of wands for me represents intention and action. So what did you learn over the course of the year, and how can you take those lessons learned forward into 2020? The other thing that can come up with this card is about increase and expansion. So how can we put action into either growth and development or increase and expansion as we move from one year to the other? For some people, this card can turn up when we are taking time and energy to broaden our horizons, and to explore our options. So that could be the energy. How can you broaden your horizons and explore options as we move from one year to the next? The other thing here for me is that the suit of wands for me can represent work. So there may be some people who are going to be putting action into growing and developing their business. If it's self-employment, this is the growth and development of business. This could also be seeing the work that you're doing in whatever form that takes. You're seeing some increase with that. So some people could actually be seeing some changes on their current job. And with that, if we're talking about moving up the ladder, the interesting thing here, and I'll hold this closer to the camera so you can see it, but what I like about reading Tarot de Marseille is that I take everything into account. So the Roman numeral 3 here on the side, and I'll turn it so that's the Roman numeral 3, but when you hold it this way, it looks to me like a little ladder. So for me, this could be about putting action into advancement, moving up the ladder, right? So if that's the case for some people, if they are on a job or working for the man, or working in someone else's business, they may be thinking about moving up the ladder, and then what could they do to get training? For me, this card can represent on-the-job training. What kind of training do they need that would allow them to move up the ladder? Or that somebody is going to be entering into management, and that's going to entail some training. It made me think of when I worked in retail and I went into management. Part of the beginning start of my management career was that I was enrolled in courses and training, things that would help me be better on the job or better in the position. So I'm seeing that. So somebody may be taking a similar course of action. But if this is your own business, then this is the growth and development of that business. In a general sense, I'm going to go back to my very first impression. This is about coming to some kind of understanding, and this would be the growth and development of the self, right? If we go with the idea that this is about progress, teaching, and learning. And so now that we've taken a look at the focus card, let's start taking a look at the surrounding cards. So starting with the card on the left, we have the Queen of Wands. So the first thing that I notice here is that we have two cards from the same suit. Right now this is ruling majority. So again, Wands for me can represent work and business. So again, this could be something business related or something that we are putting work and effort into. The Queen of Wands in particular, she for me can represent someone on the job. So if this is training, and I talked about with the Roman numeral here about moving up the ladder, this could be a woman who is in a position of authority because of the fact that she's a queen, and again, because I take other things of the deck into account, the word reign here, I tend to see it as a pun for reign, and that would be spelled R-E-I-G-N, so that's like the reign of the queen, right? Somebody who's in a position of authority. So there is that again. So this could be somebody who's in a position of authority in the workplace. If it's not, then the Queen of Wands can represent, a colleague. If you're doing your own business, this could be a woman who's going into business for herself because she's looking towards the Three of Wands, right? So this could be whoever I was talking about growing and developing your business. If you're a woman, this could be you in that regard because she's a working woman or a businesswoman, right? So if it's not somebody who's in a managerial position or the head of a business or something of that nature, then she can represent a co-worker or a colleague. Now, if it's not work-related, and we're just talking about the growth and development or creating increase and expansion in our lives, this may be on a social level because an aspect of Wands that I left out can have to do with the public or something of a social nature, right? So this could be the growth and development of certain social circles, right? Or an increase or expansion of social circles. And if that's the case, then the Queen could either be a woman who's focusing on that, again, looking that way, or that this is a woman who's going to play a part in that for someone watching this reading right now. If that's the case, then the Queen of Wands can represent a female friend. And it's usually somebody very helpful unless there's challenging cards surrounding that. And we have a card here that we haven't looked at. But typically this would be somebody who's helpful to someone watching this video. So either myself, because I'm part of the experience as part of the collective, right? Or if it's not me, then some other viewer watching this video. The only other thing I will say about her is that she can also represent a public figure, going with the social aspect, right? So this could be somebody in the public eye, and if this is about work or business, somebody who is creating increase in her business, in a public way, like we all get to see that, or this is someone that we will have some understanding about because something about her life is going to become public. So that is how I see this. But the positive sense, because I read with direction in mind, this is a woman who's looking forward to the future because she's facing all the other cards. So now let's take a look at the card in between her and the Three of Wands. And here we have the Empress, which is a major arcana card. So right now, out of the three cards, this card carries the most weight because I tend to look at major arcana cards as important issues or events. Now, the first thing that I notice is that the number 3 repeats. So we have an emphasis on growth and development and increase and expansion. That's one thing that I notice right off the bat, is the number repeating. So this could be a year as we move from one year to the next where we're focusing on increase and expansion, like I said before with the Three of Wands, or growth and development, right? So there's that. The other thing that I noticed right off the bat is that we have 2 women in positions of authority because we have the Empress card here, and she always can represent a female authority figure. So there's something about that. So if we go with the idea here that a woman may be focusing on, or she's looking forward to, becoming an authority figure, right? And that would make sense with the idea that the Empress, and then what I saw here about moving up the ladder, right? So somebody is focused on that. Or that there's going to be some desire for that, and then the Queen of Wands is somebody who's going to be helpful in that regard, right? So another thing with the Empress, for me, I noticed that she's shielding. She's got the shield covering her abdomen. So sometimes for me, this can be in the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition. The Empress can represent caretaking, like there's something that is in growth and development because she's pregnant on the card. So I tend to look at the shield covering the abdomen in the same way. So there's something about something being developed, something being nurtured, something being cared for, right? It hasn't manifested itself yet. And then the 3, in that regard, would be about results, about something being manifested, right? And so it could just be a matter of timing, right? It's going to happen in time. There's growth and development taking place in time. So I'm noticing that with the shield. It could also be, too, that this is giving us a signal about, you know, what do we need to shield ourselves from? What do we need to protect ourselves from? Because the Empress is looking to the Three of Wands, and the shield is facing the Queen of Wands. So there may be a particular relationship, you know, somebody who may be well-intentioned and wants to help, but we may need to kind of have a little bit of a guard up, or a little bit a need to shield ourselves and protect ourselves, right? That kind of thing. And I'm also seeing the possibility here of a dynamic between a woman and her mother. If we go with the idea that this represents a female authority figure, and sometimes this can represent mothers and maternal figures, the Empress I'm talking about, so there may be something with a relationship between a woman and her mother, and coming to some understanding about that, right? Because both women are looking to the Three of Wands. So this is about growth and development, increase and expansion, remember? Or coming to some kind of understanding. So it's making me feel like whatever may have happened maybe in the course of 2019, as we move from 2019 to 2020, for a woman in particular and her mother, they've reached some kind of understanding. Or they may be in the process of reaching some kind of understanding. Right? It's making me feel like there's some sort of growth and development in that relationship. It's making me feel like they've become, or the relationship itself has become more productive, because I'm seeing the idea here with the wands is that putting some work and effort into changing the dynamic of that relationship. And I want to say, because the Empress is the one who's holding the shield, it makes me feel like maybe the mother had her guard up, or was trying to protect herself in some way. So I'm seeing that as a possibility here. Now, if this isn't a mother-daughter relationship, then this may be something having to do with a friendship, maybe between a woman who is a working woman or in the business world and a woman who's a mother type or a more maternal figure. And because maybe their lifestyles have changed or are different in some way, you know, they're wanting to work on that relationship. That's what I'm seeing here. So those two dynamics, it's either something having to do with somebody wanting to move up the ladder and putting some work and effort into that, something having to do with a mother and daughter relationship and putting some work and effort into that, or two friends, one may be a working business professional woman and one may be more of a mom type role or a caretaker type energy, and trying to work on that relationship. But in and of itself, from a more general standpoint, the Empress can represent growth and development, much like this card. And a need to either take care of business. That just popped into my head. I'm hearing the song Taking Care of Business. So somebody needs to be taking care of business. And if that's the case, then when the Empress card comes up, especially for women, this card would say it's if you're taking on a role of caretaker and you're making it your intention, or your mission is the word that came to me, to make sure that you're taking care of the needs of other people, it's just as important that you honor your own needs and you take care of yourself. So that may be a lesson that somebody is learning. Right? So I'm seeing taking care of business, but don't do it at the expense of yourself. Okay, so let's take a look at the cards on the other side of the line. And here we have the 10 of, oh, you can't make this stuff up. Okay, so here we have the 10 of Cups. So just what I was saying, I love when the cards follow me up, because this card can represent relationships with other people. I tend to look at the 10 of Cups as I call it the town and city card. So the gist of it is it represents the public and being social. So there's something about being social and widening our social circles. Maybe over the course of the year for some people. Some people are really wanting to take action in that part of their lives. So I'm seeing that now. Just what I talked about with the situation between possibly a daughter and her mother. This card for me, the 10 of Cups, can come up when we're talking about family reunions. And the Suit of Cups for me can represent healing. The 10 is a number of transition. And it could be about feeling successful or feeling victorious. So there's something about putting effort into something, 3 of Wands, and getting to the other side of that, 10 of Cups, and feeling a sense of satisfaction, feeling a sense of victory on the other side of that as that situation gets completed. And it makes me feel like if we go with the idea that this card, the Empress, is a maternal figure, somebody who's in a position of authority, I'm looking at the cup on the top here, and it's making me feel like in a relationship, it's very important not to let someone overshadow other people or dominate in a relationship that may have been, if I can get the words out, part of the problem. Right? So in one regard, the 10 of Cups can represent town and city, being social, being more public. And then this card, I'm also seeing this as an entertainment card. So it's about doing things that are fun, or doing something just for the fun of it. Right? So somebody may need to incorporate more fun into their lives. Right? And again, because this card can represent entertainment and amusement. And I will say this, sometimes this card can come up when going with the entertainment and amusement. I see this as a concert. So going somewhere where there's a audience or a large crowd of people, something along those lines. And if that's the case, then the Three of Wands could represent three friends, because sometimes I see this as three parties. So three friends getting together and doing something along those lines. But I'm seeing something about like an audience. So this could, normally for me, this can represent a concert, but it would be any kind of venue where a group of people, a crowd of people actually can be gathered together. But again, if I go with the idea that this may be about a situation between a mom and a daughter, then this could be about a reunification, healing that situation, and doing it in a way where each party feels successful and victorious in their efforts. Now, another scenario that's popping up is that sometimes this could be a woman who's like a wife and mother, the Empress. Then the Ten of Cups can represent a marriage partner. So there could be somebody who's putting some effort into his or her marriage. And again, with the idea that they want a greater sense of satisfaction. This card, in that sense, you know, when we come to the end of a situation, this is like the happily ever after type effect. But it would say, like, if somebody wants to feel a sense of victory or feel successful on an emotional level or in their emotional relationships, Order of the Cards would suggest that there's going to be some work that needs to be done in order to make that happen. And so now let's take a look at the last card, rounding out the line. And here we have the Ace of Swords. Okay, so now the first thing for me, when the Ace of Swords turns up, the first thing I want to do is carry over a message from the Ten of Cups. For me, because of the crown on the card, this again could represent a crowning achievement. So it carries the symbology and the underlying message of a triumph, a victory, or success because someone is being crowned, right? So there is that. The other thing with the Ace of Swords that immediately comes to mind is it's about making your mind up. It's a card for me that represents the mind, and it implies that there's going to be some sort of decision that needs to be made, right? So if we go with the idea here about, you know, feeling emotionally successful, feeling victorious, you know, getting to a place where healing can take place, you know, as we're making some sort of emotional transition, then this card would be saying too, like, part of that is about making your mind up. It's going to happen if you make the decision for it to happen, right? So there is that. The other thing about aces is very interesting. If we go with the order of the cards, here we have a 10, which is the ending of a stage, completion of a cycle, right? And I just realized with this card, this could be an emotional cycle, right? The 10 here is usually cycles and changes, and then the cups would be emotions and feelings. So this could be emotional changes, an emotional cycle, you know, changes in a relationship, that kind of thing. And then we move to an ace, and an ace usually represents the beginning stage of something, you know, potential for the future, you know, planting the seed, you know, setting down some roots, those kinds of things. And so as one chapter ends, a new one begins. Right? But with the Ace of Swords, like I said, it usually can represent, you know, making your mind up about something or a decision. Now, because we had two cards from the suit of Wands, ruling majority was talking about work or business, right? This card for me can usually represent a job or career change. So maybe for some people, that may be what they have to make their mind up about or make a decision about, is about changing jobs. Right, and then that would make sense with the Three of Wands as the central issue about, you know, on-the-job training or moving up the ladder. Right, even moving up the ladder would be a job change, right? Because you're changing positions or you're changing titles, you know, you're changing duties, responsibilities, those kinds of things. If that's the case, if I go with the order of the cards, right? So if somebody is wanting to move up the ladder, this is a very positive sign. This would be about feeling victorious, feeling successful, you know, getting that triumph. And then we're moving into the new stage, maybe the beginning stage of that job or position. The Ace of Swords in that regard can usually suggest that at the beginning it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy start or a rocky start, but do not be deterred because, again, this card always talks, for me anyway, about a triumph, victory, or success. So starting out, it may be a little rocky, but you can get over the bumps in the road, so to speak. Right? So again, Ace of Swords at the end is a very positive sign. I just think as we're making the transition from one year to the next, and some of us, it may be quite emotional, right? It's also setting the stage for us to maybe finally make some decision of some kind, maybe one that we were putting off, and now it's the time to make that decision, to take action, right? Again, 2 wands as the ruling majority. Wands represent action, so this could just be a week where we are coming to some understanding about what we want to accomplish in this coming year, and it may be a matter of moving through some emotional cycles or making some changes in our relationships, and then making our mind up or making some decisions that are in alignment with what it is that we want to create, right, going forward. So that is how I would wrap this week's Oracle Outlook up. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and as I close, I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this reading. And as I'm closing, not just for this week, but for every week of 2019. As I always say, I can never do what I do here alone in a vacuum without any of you tuning in, watching the videos, giving me the gift of your time, leaving comments, dialoguing and interacting with me. None of that can happen without any of you. So I am so thankful for each and every one of you, for all the encouragement and the support that you have given me through 2019. And I hope that we can continue our relationship moving into 2020. So again, thank you one and all. I'm James Himm Mitchell. I'm wrapping up, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video together in 2020. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day. I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week, and I'm hoping that your transition from 2019 into 2020 is filled with lots of fun. Take care.